Hello, welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and another edition of What is in Our Stand today. Hashtag you can follow across all social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course here on YouTube. That is a series of videos where I talk about what I am working on in my work stand, but not usually a step-by-step service, right? It is more of a this is why we're doing this and not so much how we're doing this. I strongly believe the why is significantly more important than the how. The how, I mean, there's many videos out there on YouTube, and I mean, a lot of bike maintenance is just basically remove and replace. There's a bolt here, tighten that and torque it, and that's that. So I will sometimes discuss that stuff as well, but generally speaking, I am a one-man shop, so unless I have someone else to film me doing it, it's just impossible to do with cuts and editing and all that stuff. I just don't have the time. I'm a very, 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 very busy shop for that. So let's talk about this particular bike. What we're going to do is convert this from a standard crankset of 5339 chain rings to a 5542. Now, in previous videos, I've talked about that Shimano has a max rating capacity of your big ring to your little ring of 16 teeth. Some folks have come on and said, oh, well, how come this? Listen, I give it to you the way Shimano says. Your mileage may vary, your setup might be different, but this is how things work best based on the way Shimano has designed their drivetrain and their front derailleur. So 16 teeth max. So for example, if you're running a compact crank, 5034, 16 teeth. If you're running a 5339, that's only 14 teeth, and that shifts very, very well. And that's a standard crankset. And then you have your mid-compact crankset, so a 5236, and there you are, 16 teeth max between the 36 and the 52 gives you very good shifting. And it's a very common crankset. But this gentleman is really strong, and he's like, can you get me something bigger than a 53, because it's just not enough. And he's running an 1125 in the back, so it's just not enough for him. So we're gonna go 5542, and that's a 13 tooth gap from a 42 small inner chain ring to a 55 large chain ring. And the reason we're doing it also is because he has completely worn out his chainring. Look how pointy these teeth are on his big chainring. I mean, look at this one. Now, there are different profiles for the teeth, but generally they should have a square top. So I'm going to show you what a new chainring looks like, but I wanted to show you this. Now, in the past, people have said, well, isn't there a way to measure that? Or isn't there a way to look at this or that? Or what kind of tool do you use? Or that's not showing me anything. You're just showing me that it's worn and you're showing me a new one. And I'm like, well, what else can I do? There is no tool to measure a chain ring, to measure the teeth and to ensure that you are replacing them before they are worn. The only thing you can do is continue to replace your chains as often as possible when they are worn, and replace your chain rings before. In other words, don't run your chain too long, because then you'll start wearing out your chain rings. And basically, and your cassette as well. So basically what happens is, if you have a nice new type of chain ring, a new chain ring or cassette, the chain falls perfectly right in this valley. But once the chain is worn, then it starts to hit on other parts of this valley. So it'll start hitting on the tooth and start wearing that down and elongate this valley, this trough. So let me show you what a new chainring looks like. And you'll easily see how square the tops are on these teeth compared to how pointy the teeth are on the chainring that is already installed. Unfortunately, there is no other way. It's a visual inspection for you to compare. And look how square these teeth are. You should be able to see that very, very evidently with the naked eye. If you need to get readers, maybe get readers, but you need to be able to see nice flat tops like this and not pointy teeth like this. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, there is no park tool. There is no tool to actually set on top of this to see if your chain rings are worn. Now, what generally happens is, and what this gentleman had told me was, when he was leaving from a stoplight, he was having just a really tough time keeping his chain on. And what we're trying to do here is put this into the big chain ring. And so what's going to happen is see that slop? Look at the chain, how it just does not sit on the teeth. Actually, the white background's probably better. So you see how the chain just doesn't sit in the trough of each one of the teeth? See that? And unfortunately, the only way to do this is by visual inspection. Okay? Now, here's the challenge that you would have. You might say, oh, my chain keeps dropping, so my chain must be worn. And so if you're at home and you don't have a chain gauge, you'll just replace your chain. Or I've seen this happen with mechanics, and it's happened to me as well. So no one is really at fault here. But what happens is, if you replace, so there's 3 drivetrain components, right? You have your cassette, your crankset, and your chain. If they're being worn into each other, they typically will not show too much of an issue. But once you replace one of the 3, if you have left the chain on too long, by the way, this chain's nice and clean considering how worn it is. But if you've left the chain on too long and it's worn into the crankset chain rings or into the cassette, if you replace one of the 3 components, you're going to continue to have slippage. And then you'll say, well, I just changed the chain. Well, you probably have to change something else as well. Now, I will share another little tidbit with you. I ride about 10,000 miles per year. This year, I'm probably going to just be under 9, but I've had a busy year and I've also had an injury. But 10,000 miles per year, I typically do about 1 million feet of climbing. I have never had to replace my chain rings in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles that I've ever ridden. All I've ever done is replace my chain and from time to time replace a cassette. But I honestly have never changed my chain rings, because if you keep your chains fresh, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on chain rings. Chain rings are much more expensive than a chain. So, your tip for today is inspect your chain and save yourself a lot of money on having to replace cranksets, cassettes. And, some cassettes are inexpensive, like, a 105 Ultegra series cassette. But Dura-Ace cassettes are expensive, and chain rings, especially on the Dura-Ace side, are very expensive. But it's kind of a silver lining that he's got worn chain rings, because he wants to get bigger gearing. So we're going to end up with a 55, 42, and then still an 1125 cassette. Now, we are here in San Diego. climbing wise, he says, I never even use my 25. So yeah, if I move over to a 42 inner chainring, I won't, it's not a big deal. Maybe then I'll start using my 25 to climb. But this gentleman is just a really strong cyclist, and he just got his pro license for triathlon. So he's really excited to hit the 2023 season as a pro triathlete. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. And I'd like to hear from you folks. Have you, or how often do you replace your chain rings? And what kind of issues have you had with chain slippage or gear slipping, and then decided, oh, it's not just my chain, and my chain rings are also worn out. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. We will see you up the road.